Have you ever been told that to teach your dog to stay, you go something like this? Stay, stay, good boy, stay. While this may seem like it is helping your dog learn to stay, is it really? That is what this whole entire video is about. So subscribe and hit that bell so that you hear when new videos just like this one come out. It's common practice to repeat your cues over and over. I find lure trainers especially like to do this, and it's almost like they're trying to drill the cue into your dog's brain. But through trial and error, I have found a much easier and more efficient way to teach your dog to stay. And not only to hold position, but to listen to you every single time. You see, when we repeat cues over and over, we do what we call poison the cue. This is just, it loses meaning for your dog. So say you said stay 5 times when you only needed to say it once, or none at all, but I am getting ahead of myself. You said it 4 times more than what was necessary, and you're poisoning your cue. This teaches your dog that he has to listen only once every 5 times. Not a good idea, am I right? So you're creating a dog that doesn't listen to you. That's not a great idea. I know I would want my dogs to come running back to me when I called them the first time. So it poisons your cue. And then the next thing trainers will tell you is, make sure that your dog listens every single time. They're just contradicting themselves. Now, if you have trained your dog like this, you can still go back and fix it and create a dog that listens every single time. And not only will they listen every single time, but they will do it with joy, which creates a dog that will do it even faster. To start on this journey, I definitely suggest that you watch this video series that I created for you right up here, and I'll put a link in the description as well for you. And let's face it, there is no way that you can force a dog to do something. Now, some people will quite literally force their dog into position, but that's very sad. And then there are people who lure their dogs in position, which I honestly don't think is a great idea, because you're just rewarding your dog for not listening. So you might be asking, well, what do you do? And the answer is nothing. You heard me right. Nothing. While this might sound a little crazy, give me a minute to explain myself. When training my dogs, I make sure they're meeting my criteria before I even add a cue. That means they're doing it consistently, happily, and quickly before I even consider adding a cue to it. This creates a clear understanding between me and my dog and what is expected of them. And that means they hardly ever don't do what I ask them to. But let's just say they didn't. What would I do? Well, first, I would ask them one more time. Now, I'm not going to get frustrated or angry at them and change my tone or anything. I'm just calmly going to ask them in the same manner that I asked before. And most of the time, they will do it immediately the second time. And if they don't, I take it as feedback. I take it as feedback either way, whether they listen or they don't. This tells me that they need more practice with that behavior in that environment. If my dog did it on the second try, I might simply go to a little less of a challenging environment, then build my training back to where we were to kind of strengthen it. If my dog didn't listen on the second try, I'd probably go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what went wrong in my training plan. If I just went too fast in my training and got a little too greedy, then I will go backwards to where he succeeded last and build up from there. And then I'll take the extra time to make sure he understands that cue means the same exact thing in all environments. If I realize that I made a mistake when first teaching it, then I will go back and basically just reteach him the whole behavior in a different way, because obviously it didn't work the first time. Now, some of you might be wondering what this has to do with teaching your dog to stay. And the answer is how you teach your cues. I teach my dogs that whenever I ask them to do something, they do it until they hear a release cue. So instead of focusing on duration, I focus on teaching my dogs when it's over. Because if you tell your dog to sit, he'll be much more likely to sit and be satisfied sitting there, because he knows that when he hears his word, he will get to go and do something else. It's almost like a reinforcer. Whereas if you just tell him to sit and he doesn't know when it's over, then he might break position. So it all comes down to teaching your dog a release word. Well, how do we do that? First things first, your dog will need the foundational layer of search, which I will put a link in the description as well as one right up here to that video. After your dog knows search, ask them to sit and then ask them to search a few times to get them going. Search does mean that your dog can get out of position to go get something. So in essence, it is kind of a release word, but we're going to teach them a different one that doesn't mean that they can be searching the floor for cookies. Now we're going to say our release word right before we say search. Then throw our cookies on the ground. We want to choose a release word that they don't hear in everyday life. I like to use the word break, but you can use whatever you want. I just highly suggest that you don't use something like okay. If you keep repeating this step of saying release word, search, cookie, you'll notice your dog starts getting up closer and closer to when you say your release cue instead of search. And this is what you want. After more repetitions and your dog does it on your release word, you now have a brand new release word that you can use whenever you want. So now, after you teach your dog a new behavior and they know the release word, you will never have to ask your dog to stay ever again. I hope this helped you guys realize that stay is a very odd and not necessary thing to teach your dog. Please subscribe and hit the bell so that you hear when new videos just like this one come out. Have a wonderful day, guys, and I will be seeing you in the next video.